Commissioners, I'm going to call us to order. Are we live? Good morning. I'm Stephanie Rollins, and this is the South Carolina Commission for Disabilities and Special Needs. This is a special call commission workshop group meeting for strategic planning. Today is January the 20th, 2023. It is a little after 10 a.m. It took us a few minutes to get the special cookies that Commissioner Cookler's daughter baked for us, and we certainly appreciate that. I'm going to have Commissioner Blackwood read the notice of meeting statement. Commissioner Blackwood.
A meeting notice announcing the date, time, and place of the January 20th, 2023 special call commission work group meeting was distributed January 17th, 2022 to appropriate media and other groups or individuals who have requested notification. The announcement and agenda were posted at the Department of Disabilities and Special Needs Central Administrative Office and on the website. In accordance with Americans with Disabilities Act, the public has been notified that accommodations such as interpreters, mobility assistants, or other assistance will be provided to individuals with disabilities and special needs if requested in advance.
Thank you, Commissioner Blackwood. Before you, Commissioners, you have a copy of the agenda for today. I ask that you please review that and see if there are any changes, additions, modifications that need to be made.
This book?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's in the folder.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm used to saying in the book because we usually have our book.
Yeah, it's different.
All right, take a look at it.
I make a motion that we approve it as written.
Okay, I have a motion to approve as written. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second on the floor. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, motion carries and the agenda is approved. Commissioner Eddie Miller, will you please open up the prayer?
Let us pray. God our Father, you've given us the ultimate task of coming up with programs that better serve those with disabilities and special needs. We thank you for sending those that now can impart that knowledge upon us, that we can better serve those that you have tasked us to do. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. All right, Commissioners, I'm reminding you that this meeting is being recorded. Yes, sir.
I had something that I heard this morning on my
Please.
blessing that God can write straight with crooked lines.
That's
So I hope God takes crooked lines and writes a straight program for
I
you.
hope so too. I hope so too.
Let the church say amen.
Amen. All right, so Commissioners, I do want to remind you this meeting is being recorded. It is not being live streamed this morning, but it will be posted later on at a later date, but I do want to make you all aware that it is being recorded. I'm now going to turn it over to Jenny Turner and Erica Robbins, who are with Sage Squirrel Consulting, and let them get us started.
So we're going to figure out how to work this little button here. This is the agenda, and my eyes are bad, so I'm going to have to look at my paper version here. So this morning, what we're going to do is we're going to spend some time really getting to know one another, which all of you know each other, but we're going to go through some exercises. So we're going to kind of be unpacking more ideas from you all. So we're going to talk about grounding desired outcomes for people and families, so including their families, and then we're going to start to develop and establish a shared vision for DDSN supports and services. Now, you all have a mission and a vision, so we're not trying to say you're going to create like all this new one over on an island, but rather we're going to build on what you have and really kind of recenter it, re-energize it, so we can really think about why are we all here and what are we trying to do. And so we're going to spend some time this morning kind of going through some exercises at each of the table and just having a lot of dialogue with one another about what programs and services should be like to help people live their best lives. And so with that, I want to kind of pause. You can go to the next slide, or I can. I keep forgetting I have the button here. Oh, no. Did it go?
Oh, here, I'll click for you. Yep,
There it goes. Harley, I didn't know if you wanted to say a few words.
Sure, I will be happy to. Good morning, everyone. I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time out of all of y'all's busy schedules, Commissioner and executive staff. Of course, we all have a lot to do every single day, and this is a really important process that we're going through and really vital to, our agency continuing to move in the right direction and in a positive direction. So I just want to say thank you very much for being here today and being open and willing to participate in these discussions with our contractor, Sage Squirrel.
All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to do some introductions first, and we'll start kind of with myself and Jenny. And I'll turn it to you, Jenny, to talk about yourself. But just to give you like one less than a minute overview, I used to be the vice president of the Lewin Group before I started over my own firm called Sage Squirrel Consulting, and I worked there for many years on state and federal projects, and largely in the aging disability space. So I did a lot of work with the ACL on the DD side, the AOD side, but also some work with CMS on HCBS programs. Direct Service Workforce Resource Center, HCBS Technical Assistance, a lot of those kind of things. And then prior to that, I worked in Ohio Medicaid for many years. And I come with a lot of Medicaid love, meaning I love Medicaid stuff. And I love that it's different in every state because that means it's always a challenge, and I like challenges. And so I did a lot of work with Ohio Medicaid for many years, aging disability again, but my career really started in the DD system. I was a direct service worker. I was a vocational specialist. I was a case manager, which we called QMRP at the time. I worked in ICFID facilities. I've worked in the private side, the public side. I'm very familiar with like all facets of DD. It's like close to my heart. And when I was in high school, that's when they started doing what they call mainstreaming. We don't use those words anymore, but back then they called it that. And so I was like one of the peers, and I started to really get involved in a lot of the community work that we were doing in our area of Indiana. So my heart, it's always my heart. It's like coming back to home a little bit. And I'm a mother of 4 kids. I've got 2 sons and 2 daughters, and my daughters are adopted. And one of my daughters has complex medical issues and the learning difficulties that come with that. And so she's actually 21 now, and she just graduated high school in May, and she's in the Project Search program in our state, and she's got her first job offer from the hospital. So I'm happy to say they're going to pay her now. And so I was on the phone with them saying, but it's not sub-minimum wage. I want to make sure she's treated like other employees at this hospital, because I always worry about her getting like treated poorly because she needs help sometimes. And so I'm just happy to say she's like making a lot of progress. So I come with some of that, what they call lived experience, but it's just my experience. Everybody's experience is different. And so we're going to spend a lot of time today talking about what does it mean to really live good lives. And so I'm going to turn it to Jenny to kind of talk about herself a few minutes.
Thanks, Erica. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for having us here. My name is Jenny Turner, like Erica said. I, like many of you, wear lots of different hats all the time. The hat that I never ever take off is that of big sister. I have 2 younger sisters, one who has developmental disabilities and receives services in my home state, which is Missouri, and one sister who was adopted from the foster care system and has some mental health challenges related to her early childhood traumatic experiences. So that's just always the lens that I bring to any conversation, and I think really shaped my trajectory. As far as my career path, I have training as a clinical social worker. So I started as a case manager. I worked as the director of a provider association for a good long time, and then I needed to sleep after 10 years of doing that and being on call 24/7, 365. And so for the past 5 years, I've been working at the University of Missouri, Kansas City, the Institute for Human Development, which is our USED. I don't know if y'all are familiar with USED, but we're a University Center for Excellence on Developmental Disabilities. And what I get to do there is direct all of our strategic planning processes and programs. I support a pretty small team. We're a national training and technical assistance center. So we've got arms doing lots of different things, and I get to hopefully hold up that team as we are looking to use the Charting the Life Course framework, which we'll talk about today, to really support organizations to think about how they help people to have the lives that we want them to have. So excited to get to draw on the walls with you today. It's one of my very favorite things to do. My handwriting is terrible, so I'll just tell you that off the bat. But I'm looking forward to the conversation. I know Erica has shared that she's really excited about the discussions that she's had thus far, and we're looking forward to digging in with more of you as we go forward. So thanks for having us.
So now we want to hear from you. So we're going to go around, and if you could tell us your name, what you do, and then think about what is a good life to you. So if you could answer those 3 questions, we appreciate it. Who would like to start?
Me does, Chair. I'm Stephanie Rawlinson. I'm the chairman of DDSN. I'm a mother of 2 daughters. One has developmental disabilities and the other has physical disabilities. My oldest child's a quadriplegic. We were in a car accident when she was 14. But she's living her very best life. And I'm living that good life, as you described, by knowing that my daughters are both living that life. As a profession, I'm trained, my master's is in healthcare administration. I own a real estate company, a large real estate company in Florence. We do mostly commercial real estate. land acquisitions, that kind of thing. Trying to think of what else. The good life for me, will be both girls finishing school and, living a successful life and mom at the beach.
I like that.
Drink in my hand. But, I'm excited to be at DSN. You know, I think, living with a child with a disability has taught me that it's not always on my time. I'm always a person that I try to schedule and get everything like it's supposed to be, but sometimes it's God's turn to tell us what it's supposed to be and when it's supposed to be. And I've learned through this process to sit back and let God do what God's going to do. And that's hard sometimes, not to try to jump ahead of God, but that's the main thing I've learned about this. Okay,
Thank you.
next commissioner.
I'm Ed Miller, and sometimes I don't even know my name. What
We
do I
do today, that's good.
I don't even know what I do.
Where are you?
I have a varied background, and I won't go into that.
That's an interesting background. Y'all make him go into it. It's
Yeah.
fascinating.
So
You have a snapshot. If you
it's hard to give a
elevator
snapshot.
speech, you can't?
I used to be a consultant for United Health Group.
That's what Lewin's part of.
I used to own a petroleum company. I was partners with Amaretta Hess Corporation. I was a design engineer for Consolidated Rail Corporation, and I've helped put together many government programs throughout the country.
That is cool.
So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
So what's a good life mean to you? What does it
In
mean?
life, I'm too old now.
You're not gonna say a happy wife is a good life?
Does he say that often?
He's the first gentleman of Batesville.
Ed, you're not gonna say a happy, wife is a happy life?
Happy wife, yeah. She runs the show. She came with me this morning. She's the grandniece of Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune.
Okay.
And one of my grands is running track. They have a meet at USC. So she's gonna spend the day over there. So she already have given me my orders to hurry up, and once this is over,
Ready.
come over there and see the grand. And she's real good at track and field. So,
That's very cool.
but disabilities and special needs, it's in every family. And I imagine that's one of my callings to help those that cannot help themselves. So that's why we're here.
Thank you.
I'll give back the balance of my time.
I'm Gary Kohler. I'm what I call a country boy, became an ophthalmologist from West Virginia. And I'm a type A personality. I thought I had my life under control, and the Lord showed me that I did not. My daughter had a brain tumor, ended up in a coma. And she was in a coma for 3 weeks, and when she woke up as an 11-year-old, she did not know her ABCs, and we started life over.
Wow.
So that has been the challenge I've faced. And because of that experience, I got involved with DDSN. And we did everything as a private group. And I was hoping to come to a government group and make some contribution. I'm finding that to be very hard since everything is controlled by Medicaid. So I'm still looking for that branch of whatever it is that I can help with.
So what's a good life?
Perfect life would be, to me, the golden rule. And that's never going to happen. So just treat your fellow person that you meet that day with that passion, and you'll do better.
Thank you.
You want me to go next?
You're next, yeah.
I'm Barry Malphurs. I work for myself in real estate and primarily in mini storage and a couple of the smaller businesses that I have. And I have cerebral palsy, and I was on a commission for 25 years, a county commission for 25 years. And that's what brought me to this, thanks to Governor McMaster, which I'm forever grateful for the opportunity, because I had learned through the 25 years of being on a county board a lot about this agency and how it needed be changed, and we are thankful to be able to some of those changes. I'm a very, I pride myself on being a very independent person who's very authentic. And those things are very important to me. And helping people with disabilities reach their potential is my passion in this regard, I think, more than anything else, because there's a lot of people that don't reach their potential, not because they can, but because people don't give them the opportunity. Although the other key thing is potential for some is not potential for others. So it depends on the disability as to what your level of potential is. There are some advocates that think that every person can reach the same potential, but that's not true. Because we all start, people with disabilities start from behind a finish line of sorts. So it depends on how far back you start as to how hard it takes to get to where you want to be. But nothing in the world is easy, and so you do the best you can. And I don't know about a perfect life. A perfect life for me is making a difference, I guess, as much as anything. But the other thing is, I love to ride horses, which is a big deal to me, and I have for a long time, and it's been a blessing to me in a lot of ways. And my horse is better to me than most people, and I like him more than most people. That's all I'll say about that, I guess. And I appreciate the opportunity to be here, like I say, and to try to learn from what y'all have to say. Thank you.
I'm Michelle Woodhead. I'm the newest member of the commission. And professionally, I'm a senior director of sales and property tax for a nationwide company. I've been doing that for 30 years. So one of those long-term employees that has been fortunate enough to stay with the same company through various mergers and acquisitions. I love my job. My team is up in Buffalo, New York, where I met my high school sweetheart, and we've been married also for 30 years. So I was born in North Dakota. I've raised in Michigan. I lived in New York, lived in Florida, and now I'm in South Carolina. So I dabble.
I thought I heard a little bit of a different accent. I thought she's not here.
Coming or going, depends on what day it is. So 4 years ago, my youngest daughter was in a jet ski accident, and she is, like Stephanie, she is a quadriplegic. So we have entered this world of disabilities, and it's been a challenge to navigate, and that's what brings me here. I'm the CEO of our family.
Their daughters ended up being friends.
Yeah.
And they're Clemson together. Yeah.
So they're both sophomores at Clemson. So my daughter's a huge adaptive sports person, so that's been my life.
Yours is not.
Mine is not athletic at all. Mine is more into socializing and visiting.
I'd love to get paid just to do adaptive sports. So my thing in life to be happy would be to make sure my girls have the tools to live a successful and happy life. And I would love to be able to give them those tools and help them with that. So that's me in a nutshell.
Commissioner Blackwood?
I'm Robin Blackwood. I live in Greenville, which is in the upstate of South Carolina. I was born and raised in Orangeburg, South Carolina, which I've always lived in South Carolina. What I do, I have a 13-year-old son who has an intellectual disability, and I started my own PR consulting business about 10 years ago, a few years after he was born, so that I could spend more time being involved in his needs and his life and in the schools and in the community and on boards, and just volunteering time and energy and efforts to be a voice for people with disabilities. It's why I serve on this board, this commission. And I guess what makes a good life, I guess, sharing my skills and knowledge with others to improve the outcomes and the lives of people with disabilities is probably what I would define as a good life for me, things that are important, most important to me, so.
I'm David Thomas, and I'm from the upstate, born in Oconee County, so I'm kind of a born and bred South Carolina guy. And I'm retired. I was a lawyer and spent a lot of years in public service in the legislature. And now I sit around the house and read. And so my idea of a good life is to sit around the house and read undisturbed. You know, despite the fact that suddenly there has entered into my life a 1-year-old granddaughter that is spending a lot of time with me and makes it her business to come and visit me every 15 or 20 minutes, check out my glasses and pull them off and make sure, and then try to put them back on.
Make sure they're working.
Sticking me in the eye and all that sort of stuff. She destroys the TV set with the zapper. If it's off, she'll get it on to stations I've never seen before and deny that I really was looking at that. And the cell phone, she can work the cell phone better than I can now. And she's 1 year old, so that's now what I do. And that's the good life, and I'll never go back to the other good life. So there you go.
You want to call yours?
We can start. Courtney, I'm gonna let you go.
I'm Courtney Crosby. I am the Director of Internal Audit here at DDSN. So I have a varied audit background, some higher ed, the healthcare industry, did some unclaimed property auditing, worked in public accounting. But really, this is my first time working, in the disabilities and special needs field. Been here a little over a year, so I'm excited to go through this process. To really kind of help with my learning curve also. I am a mom of 2, so good life for me is balancing professional life, personal life, and making sure that those around me are happy, especially those 2 wild boys.
I'll go and then we can move around if that's fine. So my name's Harley Davis. I'm the Chief Administrative Officer here at DDSN. I've been here about 10 months, so not quite a year. I spent my 8.5 years in public health prior to my time here, as well as worked at the University of South Carolina doing research. So I come here with a public health background and an epidemiology background. But while I was at our public health agency, did help facilitate some agency-wide initiatives like public health accreditation and worked the COVID response. So I'm really happy to be here. I love this work. It's my first time, like Courtney, working at an agency that serves individuals with disabilities. But so happy to do that work. And I've always considered myself a public servant. And so I really like being able to work for state government and to serve those in South Carolina, and especially this population. So what makes a good life, is probably my family. And so, I have a 13-year-old boy and he's great and I love being his mom. And so, probably being a mom and a wife and a friend.
Hi, I'm Lori Manus. I'm the Associate State Director of Policy here at DDSN. I have been at DDSN this time for probably 11 or 12 years. I've been in the DDSN system in some form or fashion at a provider agency at DDSN proper. This is my 3rd time working at DDSN central office. In some capacity it will be 31 years in March. So I've been around for a really long time. I obviously have a passion for the populations of people that we support. It's something that's become very important to me and become a very big part of my life over the years. Because as we know, we spend a lot of time at work, right? I have also been married for 30 years this year. I have 2 kids. They're both, one is grown and married. The other will graduate with his master's this year. And so my kids are kind of at that point of getting out on their own. The thing that makes a good life is, you know, being happy with my family, seeing my family happy, being happy at work, I think is important to your life too, because you spend a lot of time doing it. So I'm excited for this process. Glad to have you guys here.
I'm Janet Priest. I'm the Associate State Director of Operations here at DDSN. Started my career with a private provider who is here in South Carolina. I worked there for about 7 years. I've been with DDSN for what will be 31 years in March. So I have literally driven to this building.
You can do it with your eyes.
We actually have the same exact state employee start date, right? Janet and I do, right? So we celebrate March 2nd every year because it's our anniversary.
State government anniversary.
Right.
I have endured the stairs at the end of the building for 30.
She's gonna say that a lot for 30
years.
That's a long time.
I am married. I have one child. I was a geriatric pregnancy. My daughter is only 20. A good life for me is when she is off the family payroll. And I don't think that will ever happen. Then if that ever happens, I'll be sitting on a beach somewhere.
So that's why Janet's been working here for so long, right? She's continuing.
First, I needed to support myself, and then I acquired a husband who acquired my money.
I do.
Oh my goodness, I love it.
Things you don't want. We'll talk about that later.
Well, you can't identify what you want until you know what you don't.
Oh my word, Janet, I could hug you. Like, you just, yes, yes. We're going to talk about that.
So I'm Greg Metz. Unlike Lori and Janet, my tenure here at DDSN is almost a year now. It'll be a year next month. I'm the Chief Information Officer here. I've been in the IT field since 1985 in various different roles in private and public sector. What makes a good life for me, probably waking up every morning, getting to enjoy my children and my new grandson that was born on Thanksgiving Day.
Oh, congratulations.
Oh, that's really good.
And golf. Don't forget golf.
What was that again?
Golf.
Golf.
Got it.
Yeah, golf is part of good life. For some.
Yes.
For some.
You're good at
Kick
it.
the ball in the wall.
All right, I think you're last but not least.
Okay.
I think you're the only one.
My name is Liz Lamond. I'm the HR director here at DDSN. I've worked for state government for 25 years. I've worked for 3 other state agencies prior to coming here. I have a great staff and I'm very fortunate for that. And, you know, you learn that it takes a lot of time to develop and teach people, you know, share knowledge. And so as I end my career in 3 years, the good life will be retiring and disappearing somewhere.
Not that she's counting, not that she's counting.
Counting down now.
Let me.
What was he gonna say?
I was just gonna say that I'm sorry that I was, one of the things I wanted to mention about me that was very important to me to say that I didn't say, which is that, there's actually 2 things after what he said. One of them is that I'm a lifelong South Carolinian, so I've never lived anywhere else, which is, I think is very important to understand what, for people in South Carolina to be from South Carolina and that sort of thing. But the other thing is that those of us who like horses think that golf is waste of a good pasture land.
I'm glad you had to get that point in. I love it. That is good.
We'll wait for the time.
I got nothing.
All right, so we are missing Constance, but when she comes in, we're gonna clap. Okay? And then we're gonna put her on the spot. So that's what we'll do. All right, so let's get started then. This is so hard to read, so I have to go here. These are just like ground rules. We like to set ground rules, and these are common ones you all have heard before, but I think there are a couple that I would put at the top, and that is focus on people. We're here to focus on the people that you support. And secondly, have fun. And third, because I'm gonna add a third, celebrate. Because I think a lot of times we spend, we spend way too much time talking about things that don't work and not enough time talking about all the great things that are working. And so we want to make sure that when we're talking this morning, that we're kind of building on the strengths that you all have, because you do have many, because I've talked to several of the DDSN staff and phenomenal people who have a lot of good history, good background, good experience, and a lot of good ideas. And so I think it's a matter of like building on that and just taking the moment to celebrate what is going really well for you all. So anyone want to add any other ground rules that you would kind of put on the list that's not up here? Do you feel comfortable with these?
Don't say it.
What's that?
It's not positive, don't say it.
I like that. I do like that. You're gonna complain, have a solution.
If it's not positive, don't say. There are a lot of negatives built into that.
Okay.
Only speak on what is true and good.
That you can verify. Yeah. All right, so we can add ground rules as we go too, if you'd like to. All right, so let me give some background. So the purpose of strategic planning, in the RFP, when we bid on it, the purpose was develop a strategic plan that helps DDSN to meet its mission, to be compliant, and to just serve people to the best as possible. That was the goal of the RFP. So what we put up here is kind of our way of saying, yes, yes, and yes, let's do that by thinking about the needs of people that you support and how the system touches them and how can we improve the middle? How can we improve the touch points so that people have flexible access to supports when they need it, where they need it, at whatever point in time in life they are, and that their lives are full. And so we're going to be focusing a lot on thinking about a strategic plan that really is really about changing lives, transforming systems. So that's what I have on this next slide here. So when we think of transforming services and supports, and you don't have to tell me, those of you in this room, if you disagree with this, but for most of us in this room, we exist within the context of our family and our community. You could say, yes, that happens. When you're a person with a disability, whether you have IDD or any disability, oftentimes the services get wrapped around you like a bubble. And it's like, I want to protect you. You put services, and then you were preventing people from having the context of family and community that the rest of us have. And so what we want to focus on is really thinking about transforming system. Think about strategic planning in such a way that you're transforming so that you have the person within the context of the family and the community. And the little stars you see, Jenny's going to talk about those as we go through the morning. But that's really about service and supports kind of being there when you need it, where you need it. It's not about trying to create a bubble, but rather giving you what you need when you need it at that point in time. Does that make sense? So when I think of my daughter, I use this kind of charting the life course approach. The stars change. I have the star in place now, the needs that she has now, that's going to change a few years from now. It changes across the lifespan. It changes as the family and the community context changes. And so those stars become really critical, and we'll kind of unpack that through the morning. But it's really about transforming services. Well, this is the building side.
So
That's why it's doing
at
that.
the end of is this a 1.5 hour thing, or are we doing is this like part 1, part 2, part 3, or something like that?
It's a building block. So we're starting this morning and we'll continue to talk over time.
At the end of our 1.5 hours, aside from eating more cookies, those are really good cookies. What should I walk out of here if I'm driving home? What should be in my mind that's not in my mind right now? What's the end result?
What we'd like is for by lunchtime for you to be driving home going, I'm excited. I think I have a better idea where the system needs to go from a visionary perspective. And then we're going to start adding things to that over time. Because this is like a building block piece that we then need to talk to each of you like individually in your regional areas, talk to people in your communities, really understand what the system needs.
Like many of you all are very well educated folks, and most of the people in here are. And contrary to what a lot of my high school teachers thought, that I shouldn't go to college at all because I wouldn't spend but one semester there. I ended up with like 3 graduate degrees. And I found that the courses and the classes that meant the most where there's very clear definition of at the end of this, you will understand 1, 2, 3. So I knew what I was looking for. And what I hate is ambiguity. And that frustrates me more than anything. So I just lay that out because if there's not specificity in what we end up with after 2 hours or whichever time we have, I think the time's wasted and then I'll dismiss it from my mind. So that's why I asked the question, not to be difficult,
No,
but
I
it's
understand.
to make sure that from kind of an academic perspective, because this is very academic, what you have here in a way. If it doesn't register somehow, then it will just be to me, another bureaucratic something that I had to go to.
I think if I could speak to
Yeah,
that
go
just a little bit, I think a lot of times with strategic planning, we dive right into the how. How and the what. What are we going to do? How are we going to do it? How are we going to get all of these things done? I think each of you, as I was listening to you introduce yourselves and talk about why you're here and why you've committed, whether your career or your time and your resources and your energy as a commission member, you have a vision for what you want for people and families with disability or who experience disability in some way. And I think we don't oftentimes take the opportunity to communicate with each other about what is that vision? What is our why? So I think if I were to answer your question, what we hope to achieve by the time you walk out of here in the next hour and 45 minutes or so is really having a shared understanding of why before we then start to identify strategies for how. So our goal today or this morning is to have a conversation about what do we want for people and families and what do we want for our system so that we can meet the needs of people and families in that direction. And then we'll spend time with each of you individually, with the regional centers, with stakeholders and stockholders throughout the next
Few months.
figuring out how do we get there. But this morning we want to set a vision for where it is we want to get to. Does that make sense?
That helps everybody.
So on the way home, you should start thinking about how to get there.
Home,
On the way, wherever you're going.
I follow 385.
But I
It'll
mean, how,
get me there.
how to get to the point of
You said how to get there. I did not know you were talking about
the
this.
service. No. I know you
All right, I'm
are.
going to move this blank slide to something interesting.
Okay, I'm
All right,
fine,
so
thank you.
basically what we're going to do is start to think about a vision of a good life for people. You start with the person and they live within the context of their family and their community. We talked about that a minute ago. And wrapped around them are the domains of life that all of us experience. We all have daily life employment. We have jobs. We are involved in our communities. We might go vote and maybe we're senators, right? Or maybe we do some other public service like the commission is doing, or working for the state. And then we also have our churches and the things we do in our community. Maybe we volunteer. All these domains in life are touched in our lives. We touch all of them. And so those domains are important to all people, even if you have a disability. And so the services and the service delivery system should support those domains, just like we have that in our life. And then wrapped around those domains is the concept of what we call 3 buckets, which Jenny is going to unpack in a little bit. But basically all of us in our life, we discover and explore things, we connect and network to things we need, and we access goods and services. So if I believe in like healthy living, I like organic foods. And so I explore in my local community, where can I find organic food? And I then network with people I know. Where's the local farmer that I can trust that he's not putting pesticides in the food, and I find them, and then I access the goods and services and I buy it. So I'm using all 3 buckets when I'm accessing food. And so we all do that. These are normal things everybody does. And then wrapped around that is the concept of integrated support. So when you are a person with a disability, or even if you're an older adult and you're starting to experience disability, you're going to have in your life these what's the word I'm thinking of? They're like strengths, like you have personal strengths that you build upon. You use technology to kind of access supports. You access sometimes eligibility-based supports. You're going to use your relationships to get some of the things you might need. And I'm missing one. Yes, I can't.
Eligibility specific.
Yeah. And so all of these things wrap around your ability to access the supports and services you need at any given point in time. And so when you put all that together, that's what we mean about the STAR. And we'll unpack that in a little bit more detail. And then you see the trajectory. You'll hear us say trajectory a lot. The trajectory is getting where you want to go. What's the goal? Up here. You don't want to be down here where you don't want to be. You want to go up here. And across that trajectory is your life. We all grow.
The up here, I'm sorry, you lost me. Is that
Whatever your goal is.
personal strengths? Is that where we are?
Yeah, as we look at this, as you look at that diagram, you know, we really think about the good life as someone being able to have experiences in all the different life domains, having their buckets of needs filled, and accessing an integrated array of support.
And we're talking about our clientele.
We're talking about all people.
All people.
Yeah, all people.
Everybody within the building and out in the world.
Everybody. Yeah, we really believe that people should be able to experience the things they want to experience in all the different life domains, that they have their needs met, not just related to the goods and services they want to access, but to information and training and skill development and personal networks and, you know, social capital and all of those things. And that the best way to fill those buckets, so to speak, is not relying on any one system. You know, we all know, you mentioned Medicaid, right? Medicaid is a special thing.
Ready to say you need to draw a ring around that, but Medicaid, because it controls everything.
So we put Medicaid in that little green part of the star that you see, because it's a part of that, array of supports. And if we really leverage Medicaid well, it can help to facilitate growing relationship-based supports and technology-based supports and our own personal strengths and assets. But a lot of times, people with disabilities especially have a pretty green life. That's how we talk about it. All of their supports come from one place. And so what we're trying to do is think about how do we integrate supports and services in a way that makes sense, right? It's not always going to look like a perfect star, so to speak. But how are we really thinking about all of the different supports that a person needs? And how does our system then support the trajectory towards having those needs met in a way that isn't wrapping around a person, that really does, if you go back to those circles, it sprinkles the different types of supports into that family and community context.
That helps?
Yeah, but I still disagree in a lot of ways, because you have to have a Medicaid waiver to do anything. That waiver controls what they can get.
It's a tool in the toolbox. That's how I always think about it. It's kind of one.
It's the only financial tool they have.
A lot,
Yeah.
not as well.
Well, and I think for our purposes today, I think that we completely acknowledge that there are requirements. If you go back to that touch point slide, there are things we have to do because Medicaid says we have to do them. We want to think about how are we doing them in such a way that we're recognizing that people have needs that may or may not be met by Medicaid. And so how can we balance the needs of the system, federal, state, organizational, county, all of those things, with the three buckets of needs that people have, and try to do our best. It's never going to be a perfect system, right? But how can we do our best to really acknowledge and balance those things so that we're being person-centered in how we meet those system requirements?
So basically think about the framework as the how that impacts the why, or the what, the what. So we're going to talk about the how, and it's really about using the framework to drive change, to use it as a set of tools and resources to get people thinking and focused on solutions that are developed by all people and not just one or two people in a room. So it's really meant to be a set of tools for networking. So what we have on this slide is basically the importance of ongoing engagement. And this is kind of the pattern that we're going to do today, but it's also the same pattern we're going to use when we talk to regional centers, when we go out and talk to people in your local communities. And so we're going to be talking about the three buckets. We're going to be talking about the trajectory, how you're going to get to your goal. We're going to talk about people within the context of their family and their community. And then we're going to come up with solutions that are developed by all so that we can move toward the vision that you have set for the system.
So if you're out discussing with, did I interrupt somebody?
You're fine.
If you're out discussing with caseworkers and just folks out in the field that are working with the clientele and the clientele itself, and you're getting feedback here, and they say, but what good does it do us telling you all about this because those guys back at the main office don't know anything? And how does the information flow get to us so that we're actually responding to what they're, because a lot of what we're talking about here, I'm not sure where I'm supposed to be going as a commissioner. I listen to the staff because I'm not the pro. I haven't had 33 years here and all that. And they're the ones that are professionals that should know everything. But one can get confined. You know, there is such a thing as inbreeding. But out in the world where people are experiencing how do their needs and their concerns and their visions really start playing into what I need to hear. And so I because as you're talking, I'm thinking, well, I'd love to hear what they had to say. What does the world have to say that's being serviced by Medicaid and the waiver system And how can we as a commission envelop their vision into what we should be doing to see how, to see how Medicaid on the federal level would make it work. So in other words, all the thinking and theorizing that I might be doing, I would want to be subject to what the world that we service really need.
And that's exactly what we're proposing. Meaning we would use these same tools as we're talking with a group of families, people who receive supports through the system. We've talked to Harley about the idea of coming up with a standing advisory group of people who receive support so we can get ongoing feedback from them. Because the system should really be about helping them live the lives they want, the way they define it. And so their voice is like super important. And then we would use the same process when we're talking to providers and case managers, like, how do you all view a good life? And so that's what we mean by this bubble here when we're saying we're going to use the same process with all people across South Carolina, DDSN, anybody that's like touching the system and those touch points that was on that other slide. We're going to be talking to them and using the same kind of process to gather their feedback. So we'll be able to come back to the commission and DDSN and say, this is what we heard. This is the right vision, the right North Star that everybody agrees should be there. Now let's talk about the things that work and don't work. And how do we come up with solutions and strategies that everybody can kind of buy into that is going to help us move toward the North Star. Now, you're not going to be able to get to the North Star right away. Like it would be not appropriate and not realistic to say, oh, this is the vision we have and we're going to do it in 2 years. I mean, the reality is some things take time. And so part of the strategic plan will be also prioritizing some of those things you want to put first, second, third, so that you're starting to move the system toward a system that really works for people, that's integrated, that allows people to live their good life the way they define it. Would you add anything to that?
No, I think that's great. And I think that we can always keep in mind too, there's current state. And then, you know, if one of the things we identify as part of the vision is ongoing stakeholder feedback loops, that can be something that's built into the strategic plan. And there's a strategy, which that's the purpose of a strategic plan, but there's a strategy to address that on an ongoing basis. So I think that that's a really, I appreciate what you said, because we do want to be anchored in what people and families are telling us they need. And so how are we continually getting that feedback even after the strategic planning process is ended?
Does that help?
Yeah.
Good. Any other questions? So what we want to do today is really build out the vision piece. And I put this slide in here because it helps to kind of start with some context, because no one in the room wants to start over. We don't need to start over. We need to start from where we are in the foundation, and the foundation's strong. There's a lot of really good stuff. And believe me, I've seen lots of states. You have issues, but every state has issues. And some of them are common issues across the country too. They're not unique to South Carolina, but you have a lot of good. There's a lot of good strength. And I think when you look at like the mission vision for DDSN, a lot of the right things are here. When you think about people having choice, being empowered, getting the services they need when they need it, the position of DDSN as the entity that coordinates and supports people to do that. This is a really strong vision. So now what we want you to do as we go through the rest of the morning is really anchor in the vision, but build on that and really think about what is the vision for a good life for people, like kind of build on it and go beyond it, but know that it's here.
Is the strategic planning process going to help you understand if we're doing these things that we say we want to be doing at all, or?
And it might help you refine the vision to something you really wanted to be that maybe these words aren't conveying. So it might help you like confirm it in some ways, but also build on it. Does that help? Okay. Any other questions? All right, so now we're going to get started. I'm going to turn this to Kim.
All right. So I think it's really important, and I kind of already gave away the farm a little bit with some of the things I said, but I think, and I feel weird standing behind a table. Like I'm presenting. I'm not trying to present. I don't even want to stay sure. You know, I think it's really important. Have any of you heard of Simon Sinek? Anybody?
I have.
Okay, so here's what I would love for you to do on the 305. The 305, is that the highway?
385.
385.
I'm like, what's the 305?
I don't know. On the way home, so there's an 18-minute TED Talk by Simon Sinek, and it's called The Golden Circles or Start With Why. And he talks about how critical it is for organizations to really truly understand and to communicate why they do what they do. We are really good in our society and in our work at saying, well, here's what we do and here's how we do it. But that's not really what people respond to, right? I have all Apple products. I'm an Apple product obsessee. I don't buy them because they tell me what their specs are. Like, I couldn't tell you what my screen size is. I don't know what kind of gig of RAM byte.
Whatever it
things.
is.
I know I'm stressing you out right now. I know, I get it. Right. I buy them because they tell me how much more efficient it's going to make my life and how great it is that my watch syncs to my phone, syncs to my computer, syncs to my AirPods. Like, I'm all synced all the time, right? I buy the why. He, in his TED Talk, Simon Sinek references Dr. Martin Luther King, and he said, you know, he led a movement because he said, I have a dream, not I have a plan. So what drives people is that vision. Now, we're going to come up with a plan. Don't get me wrong. We're not just going to say, okay, great, there's your dream, have fun, good luck. But we have to start with, why are we doing what we're doing? What is our purpose? What do we ultimately want to accomplish? If you are a nerd like me, you're familiar with logic models, if you've written a lot of grants or run a lot of grants, and there's always that column on the far side that's your outcomes, right? What is it that we ultimately want to see? And those are the squishy things. I'm just going to be honest, right? On a logic model, your outcomes are not necessarily things you're going to send out a quantitative data survey and be able to check the boxes. So we're going to start in the squishy. I'm going to ask your permission to stay a little squishy, and we're going to get more concrete as we go through the morning.
If you look at our website, then and you compare what's already been established, I don't want to necessarily recreate the wheel. Is the information on the website in any way helpful? So we're looking out in the world, they say, okay, here are your objectives, purpose, and page 2, and you click, and you go through some of the headlines, and is none of that there that would be of help to
Well, sure, it's
someone in the
there. We're
world
using
looking
it to
for?
build the current state. But the websites look at things as if people are black and white boxes. People are people. So what we're after today is the squishy good life stuff.
Yeah, we're having to put down in English though. And so the website could very well contain the things that 15 years ago people already thought out.
Yeah.
And we're part-time. Oh, we're part-time guys. Maybe in my case, maybe no more than 5 hours a month. So how am I qualified to create anything? And I would go back to the website and I would say, why doesn't this duplicate what you're talking about? I mean, is it not? Well,
This is not really about just thinking about people with developmental disabilities or head injury. This is about people. It's about all life. And so you bring in that experience. And so when you're thinking about a person who might need a little bit of support, yes, you know what you want. Why would you not want them to have the same? And so that you bring that experience in, and that is what we're after. We're after like the squishy, as she said. How do you define good life? Are DDSN services helping people to live what they want, the way they want to live?
it is one of the political truisms that we stand on the shoulders of giants. And no matter where we are inside the political system, whether it's creating legislation where people come to us, where you're already operating off a legislative basis, you have the code of laws and you have case law that also is applicable that maybe has not been put into the code, but still there it is as substance. My question is, it doesn't make sense to me to say, or it makes sense, but all right, what do you think about life or this or that or the other? When I think this has been thought out already. Isn't this down in black and white from previous generations? And the first thing I should be looking at should be not theoretical David for the last 35 years in public office or whatever, but should rather be what do the people that actually experience DDSN and help create and help expand, they made mistakes, but they got a lot of things right. And I want to see what they said. So I'm trying to do is stay away from squishy, mushy kind of ambiguities that don't lock me down into reality. I want to be locked down into reality. The first thing I want to know is what did our predecessors do? What did they say? Where did they go right? Are we thinking they made some errors, some sort of way? And did they not go out into the public and reach out into the service community? I mean, what is sort of the history and the background of this, so that I'm grounded. I don't want to think that.
Okay, so there hasn't been a lot of what they're doing right now in this agency for many years. Okay, so strategic planning has not really occurred on a agency-wide level really in the most recent, I mean, in many, many years. So because
I
of
don't
that,
think in history it has.
right, I tried to get information on that, but I couldn't get
I
a
don't
definite
think
answer.
it's true.
So this process is doing something that maybe, we think maybe that has ever been done. It needs to be done because we want to make sure that what we're doing as an agency is delivering the right services to the right people at the right time. And we don't know necessarily that we're doing that. And this process is going to pull that info out of the world, both in the community, in this office, in among us, to just get us on a right path. Because if nobody has a strategic goal that they're working under, then people get pulled and not focused, and things don't really help build and strengthen the agency. And that's what strategic planning can do ultimately, but it's a process, and it starts with, gathering information. And they're obviously thinking, they're trying to get us into a place that's a little bit more like
Visionary.
yes,
Positive.
visionary.
We're focused on
Visionary, and they're gonna get down to the probably a little bit more of the nuts and bolts ultimately,
Absolutely.
where we can see like this service does this and doesn't do that, and this service is great because this and this, but it's just we just have to this is just kind of how we
I
have to
can
start.
sort of get that, but at the front end of this, and knowing that there are going to be other facets to what you all are bringing to us, my intuition is, what did prior decades of employees and leadership take us to? They certainly had to have some vision of their own.
Well, look at the problems that we know that exist in the system. That's where it's gotten us to. I mean, the problems that we've seen that are happening, that's what years ago of work has done. It's gotten us to, there's not consistencies on eligibility. There's not consistency on people getting a waiver slot. There's not, so we can see what the past has given us because we look at it every month with issues we have to solve, problems we have to weigh in on, things we have to vote on, so this process is a way for us to tangibly identify through various inputs where we need to go, what we need to do to move forward and improve things that are not working. So sorry, how I see it. I don't know.
No, I appreciate this.
correct, actually.
I think it's good.
I know. Oh, I know. I didn't
We're
want to
talking to you too.
No, I just
I
don't
thought that
want
was
to
such
see.
absolutely wonderful insight. You got something.
That's good insight, yeah.
I think here's the reality of the world that we are living in. Community and society and federal policies and structures and attitudes have shifted. And so I think that we will build on the giants that came before us. Absolutely. We're not throwing any of that out. You should see Erica's spreadsheets. Like, this is what I do for a living and they stress me out. So she is in those nuts and bolts and will continue to be in those nuts.
Okay,
and bolts.
here's how it would, to me, make sense. All right. And so, but I'm not trying to mess with your program or put the skids on it or something. I'm trying to comprehend it from what I have seen in my 73 years. It's hard for me to believe I'm that old. But you look at what is, and then what has been built upon through the decades. A lot of that you're going to find right on the internet. A lot of times it is incorporated in the knowledge that gets passed on from generation to generation of employees and all that, how they do, what they do, how they try to reach out and do all this. It would make tons of sense to me to be able to say your vision may be there. The vision has been according to the website. And that's the first thing I did when I got appointed. Before I actually got appointed, I spent hours on the website just reading directives, reading what things were done. But because I started getting an idea then of, all right, here's where the agency has been, where it was trying to go. And then when things came up that were question marks, okay, every 3 years, you're going to have things that are going to be quasi-reform issues. We need to be doing it this way to be more effective. And the LAC report said, let's fix that. The legislature wants us to pursue, okay, let's do that. So it's a coalescing. And it's not David so smart and so sharp in vision that I'm looking like one of these progressive churches where the lead pastor is the vision pastor.
We're not
Oh,
trying to do that.
please. I just throw up when I hear that kind of nonsense. And then when he gets a vision, who's the vision from? God. So can you ever disagree with his vision? No.
Well, we're not
It was
here to do
God.
that. What we want to do is just kind of take the chance to have dialogue with each other. I understand where you're coming from.
I want to hear there has to have been an integration in some form or fashion, even if it was inadequate or did not make some sense from time to time. So that there has to be a connect with the past. And what I'm trying to say is, please don't get me, they can do what they want, but out there hypothesizing
Oh, we're not asking you to do that.
about whatever, and it doesn't make sense for the totality or the history.
No,
So
I-
that's it. That's all I'm gonna say, and I hope I've made my point.
You've made your point.
Okay,
Good.
I hope I've made my point.
Yeah.
So I think what we want to do is kind of contextualize the conversation. You know, in a lot of times we spend a good amount of time talking about what are good services, right? Your monthly meetings are probably dealing with, like you said, those, what are good services? What issues do we need to solve within the service system? We want to scale back a little bit. When I heard you all describing your vision of a good life, you didn't say it's good services, right? Now, we know that good services can facilitate some of the things that you said, right? But we want to start with, and we're not going to spend a ton of time here this morning, A, partly because we don't have a ton of time left, and B, because we want to get into the nitty gritty and we want to get into the weeds. But I'm going to hand out to you a trajectory. And a trajectory, it's just a fancy way of saying a pathway, right? A roadmap. But if you don't know where you're going, your map isn't going to make a whole lot of sense. So we're going to start with, what is it that we want for people in their life? What does a good life look like? How are we thinking about those outcomes that we want for individuals and families that the services should facilitate, right? So it might be time with family, like you mentioned. It might be education. It might be vacations. And it's okay to think about all of those different life domains. What are the experiences that we want people and families to have that would make up a quality of life? So I'm going to hand you these trajectories. On the right-hand side, I'm not very good at my rights and lefts. I have a master's degree, but for whatever reason. So this, yes, if you wouldn't mind, this column where it says vision for individuals and families. At your tables, we want you to take just about 5-10 minutes and talk about what is it that you want for good lives for people.
Is this the page?
Just open, yeah, she's just giving you a bigger version.
Here's it, yeah. If you want to flip that over. So you're going to start with that purple column on the right-hand side and just think about, what is a good life for people like that? What are the outcomes that we want for people and families?
Yeah.
And if you feel like you're stuck, think about what a good life is for you. What type of life do you want? So yeah, you have a smaller version in your personal packet, but if you would use that table packet,
Do you want to all pull it out and then talk about it?
We can do one.
just start.
Yeah, I'm fine to write, absolutely.
She does. Yeah.
We do one.
You do one great table, and I think social support,
We gave you copies in case.
just to ease your time, so you know that people don't have families and guardians too. Right, so social support could be very broad. It could be
Bigger, but that's it.
based organization. Social support, so that people build those relationships. I know I've read other way on social relationships, but yes, she's good, like, and that's.
You're thinking about direction.
No, she already changed her chair.
It's based on like your own experience. You want your life. What is your vision for them?
Hey, I tell you.
Let's make her see part of the.
We are good.
Dr. Vine's daughter, Rob, you've got, I feel it myself, like you're blaming.
Okay, what role does DDSN
I'm there for
serve
it.
in a context?
No.
What is it that they are not doing that can help me
System.
to have?
That's the
Well, like, even though I know I'm not gonna be able to lead, yes, is there, are they, are we looking at the whole and not the part, one of the parts?
Basically, you're focusing on the section here. So it's usually like a lot about advancing individuals.
Not just say.
What does it look like?
What are people, their families, and then not DDSN
I mean, I had a lot of calls about the things in Florence, for example. And then we got the abuse and neglect support inside. Imagine that, but then that's. And I want to make sure that in my children's.
Independence,
Support.
you gotta support the families too.
And not think
And the child, I mean, it depends on the age.
And those stories probably break my heart the most, is when those parents come in and say, this is not right. That's the hardest.
Yesterday, that's a major issue. Coming up with ways
I think that support is just like you're talking
You know, my
about.
daughter just said,
The support
it's
system,
the biggest thing that even count.
they are as far as educating the people, I think there's that bill.
So education and training.
I think that builds some of that. Does that make sense? Like you're stuck, the education of those that are taking care of those can help with a lot of that.
Okay.
Security.
So it's really about having, I mean, it is access to some extent. I'm trying to think about it.
Yeah, yeah.
But
It's
it's
see
really,
all the time.
so it's having the access to education and training, or to educated and trained staff, right? Like,
Yeah.
sort of on both. So,
Exactly.
I'm just gonna write training and education,
Yeah.
just sort of like, you know. 'cause
job
it's-
training,
Yeah.
because one of the.
Use choice.
Absolutely, because
Especially when it comes to federal government, they're always like, people choice, choice, choice.
Because when a person comes in.
And then they beat us up, when we don't do it, you know, 50 choices.
Because the trouble comes, you know, we come back to whether or not we actually have the right kind of screening programs in place to make sure that we get.
Where they live, where they work, how they get to their work.
So that's really.
You gotta get. We hear that, we don't forget some stuff. I think that's the counselor parent and Jayla is the opposite, you know, it's just, I sure figure it very well.
Okay, as you're thinking about this, I'm sorry to interrupt you, I apologize. So as you're thinking about this, Janet said something earlier, and I told her I was gonna hug her, which I still might, but, so Janet said, it's hard to know what you want if you haven't defined what you don't want. So as you're thinking about this, drop down to that red box on, right underneath that, and think about, what are the things we want to avoid in people's lives? What would not be a good life? What are bad outcomes? There's a really good.
I don't see anything.
Right, you have to go through.
Because when you think about it.
Yeah, and I'm just talking.
It's a good one, Joe.
On the surface, on our website, it says division.
Literally,
What are you gonna say about her?
well, I mean, my mother would laugh when she.
You have it.
She's like, I'm clicking on a button.
Why not know it? You were a poet and you didn't know.
I'm telling you, eligible. Go apply, here's your application. I always want to be a background singer, is that artistic stuff? Yeah. Creating community support. And that's what they want, that ease of finding
Like I
information.
say, when I pulled up on DDSN's website, it's not like. Right, then you see vision. I don't see values. I don't see principles. So then we need to look at our website and kind of revamp it so that
Yes,
I'm looking for a product.
that's right. What can I get?
What can I get from?
Help me.
Waiting.
I don't need to get down to page 20 And still haven't figured out.
What I need to fill out.
No, I have. So what I wrote is to try and capture that. You can't even ability to easily access information. That's important. Like, that's the best. So it could be, in this case, specific to DDSN services, but it could just be broader, like, if I want to be able to do something, I want to be able to easily access the information to be able to do it. So.
I have a daughter who rides a wheelchair on the beach. She loves to go to the beach.
This is how I do it when I'm busy. That's how I do it.
That's what America's about.
Yeah, they free wheelchair. The beach in South Carolina. We have to call every beach access company and say.
All right, you've got 3 more minutes. 3 more minutes. Try to capture all your ideas of what you want for a good life. But
If we start an item.
that says that.
Elderly people, they don't know how to use
Yeah.
So we got to make it simple. Let's keep it simple, stupid. So then it's clickable. Wheelchair, it's clickable. When it get to that lane, it has everything that they need to know. Even if they have to pick another lane, it's all there for them in that one little circle.
I want to say.
Maybe access to information.
Place sports. Yeah,
Right.
I think so too.
Go on
To
access to.
don't.
Latest just.
No, that was in positive.
Yeah, so we were I do both. Sometimes it's helpful to go here because it helps you out things that you do once. Sometimes people have a hard, easier time doing them.
If I can, they go on.
Services.
I'm gonna get my.
All right, about 1 more minute.
Or basketball. I want from the parents, you know, what I want to be.
Right, I told her last week, it's there 11 o'clock, her daughter isn't here, doesn't get home, well, I'll get up in the morning, just.
My child.
She can turn it out.
Trying to figure out.
It's 30 now.
30.
Well, she's just as smart, just as sharp, just as, I mean, academically up at the top of her class. I don't want to see her get out. She could not be able to get.
All right, in your last 30 seconds, decide who's gonna share from your table. There's some bigger points.
I want limits.
Decide who's gonna be the sharer.
Resign my position.
You had to go.
Take a look at our website.
As a group.
We need to, whether it's saying, doing those things.
Okay. Here's how this is gonna work. Yeah, I knew once I got to talk. Here's how this is gonna work. So who would like to
That's right.
share oh, Harley, she's on it. All right, so Harley, I'm gonna have you share first thing, and then if your table had something similar, you just gotta raise your hand, right? So we're just gonna kind of confirm with each other, so we're not reading duplicative lists. So Harley, what did y'all want for people and families?
Access to healthcare.
Yeah. Anybody else have something similar?
We did.
Okay, great. What else?
Social supports.
Oh,
Can you
that's
say a little
good.
bit more about that?
I was thinking about, people, not everybody has a family, right? Some people live on their own, but they have social supports in other ways. So I was trying to be all encompassing in my mind, like it could be families, parents, guardians, siblings, ensuring that people have those connections. But if they don't have them, how do you help build them for people, right? So getting them involved in community organizations or faith-based organizations, those kinds of things. So having opportunities for people to build connections and relationships, just like you read. Yes.
Anybody else have something similar? Connections, relationships, social circles,
Access idea.
access?
Yeah.
Great. All right, what else did you have, Harley?
Safety and security.
Did anybody else say safety and security? Yes. Okay. What did you have next?
Training and education opportunities.
Anybody else have something training and education related? Okay.
Inclusion.
Yeah, that's very one. That's very one.
All right.
Independence.
Anybody else? I feel like I've heard Mo big tables talking about independence. Okay,
The ability to access information that's important to you.
that's a lot of words to write up here.
That's
Sorry.
not fair. They've got too much staff at that table.
Don't everybody clap at
Hey.
They're cheating over there.
Kind of along those lines with
I'm-
being able to access or get help when needed. So
Okay, I like that.
Yeah, that'd
Help
be
when
fun.
needed.
I couldn't hear what she said.
Get help when needed.
Oh,
We kind of went with the same access as someone who doesn't have,
Yeah.
no matter what it is, if it's recreation, if it's healthcare, if it's anything, and that goes along the lines with, you know, what's important to you, right? Being able to get to whatever's important.
So could I put life experiences, just as that would be kind of an all encompassing, whether, like you said, sports or health or baking, or I'm with your daughter, like I'm all about baking. All right, so life experiences. Carly, anything else on y'all's list?
One more. So this was based on what we don't want, but really making sure that there's no limits to what you can do or accomplish. So what we don't want is limits, right? And so what we do want is for there not to be any.
And potential, reach your potential.
All right, Lori, what did you have that was different?
So it's really not different because a lot of what we had, we said a little differently than they did, but you know, I think one of the things that we tried to focus on was people having positive control over their lives, being able to choose where they live, where they work, what time they get up in the morning, what they wear.
Always choice.
Right.
Great. Awesome. Anything?
love.
Love.
As we have gone around, Robin and I have done this, I think, twice. What I've seen that has really struck me in some of the home situations where you have 6, 8 people there, and you've got, and if they know that person, it might be the director or assistant director, and he or she will know their name, and there's that relationship, and there's a lot of hugging going on. And I've thought many times, this isn't separate. This is like family, and they really love each other. And that person feels like he or she is being taken care of, and a lot of attention going to it. And the one word is love.
Belonging, could I add belonging? I feel a sense of like, you're talking about belonging as I hear you.
Belonging with a family kind of mentality, and you know your mom and dad love you, but they're outside of the family now. And so there's a substitute that goes on.
Yeah, because a lot of them don't have active family members in their lives still. So they become family within the house they live in.
And what's going to be interesting is when you're out in the world talking to the caseworkers and the family at the homes and the actual folks, whether or not there's a pretty substantial overlap there. That would be really interesting to see.
We are thinking along the same line.
Yeah.
Yep.
One
Anything?
of the things I'll tell you that I experienced, and it was one of the most humbling experiences for me I've had since I started with DDSN, is I went over to visit at Sleepy Center, and they were great. Facility was great. Everyone over there was great. And so then I sat down with the administration and I said, talk to me about the consumers here. Tell me, how many of them have family that come at Christmas, holidays, whatever. And they said, of our patients, maybe 3% of them have family that ever call them.
Mhm.
And maybe 1 to 2% have family that ever even come by here to see them. And I started really thinking about that. And I thought, oh my gosh, and I literally got in the car and sat there and cried for 30 minutes because I felt so bad that they didn't have their family to support them at all. But these blessed employees over there, were hugging them and giving them a baby doll. And, I know that sounds silly, but to me, that was extremely important, to be able to see them being loved and see them appreciating that love from those people. So that, I don't know.
Yeah, well, and what I feel like I hear both of you kind of referencing, and I think it came up as you were sharing your introductions, and I heard at tables, we all want to matter, right? Whether that's based on a relationship or based on our contribution to our community, like we want to matter to somebody. We want to be known. We want to, so it might be that mom and dad never come around, but I know I matter to my staff or to my fellow roommates, mom or dad, or whatever that is. So did y'all have anything up on in the purple that we haven't already said?
Quality services, did you say that?
So that what?
What? I'm sorry, what's your question?
So that what? Quality services so that.
So that they can live in a safe place, feel that they're got good support, depending on the service. I mean, there's so many services that DDSN provides. So I guess just that it's a quality service that allows them to be comfortable and happy in their lives, in their home, in their residential community, whatever facility, whatever.
Thank you. All right, who wants to tell us their list of what they didn't want? What are we trying to avoid?
Government control.
I feel like that might have been said somewhere else. What else?
You can tell that to our federal government.
Avoid frustrations. Confusion.
Anger. We said, I mean, just the opposite, sort of injury or physical, emotional hurt.
We did unsafe, inability to access healthcare and other basic needs.
I think we don't want to be a barrier to.
I think that that's a really important question. A lot of times we make the best decision that we can with the information that we have. But the what we don't want is a little bit of a gut check, because there can be unintended consequences. We can write a policy that we think is getting us where we want to go, but if we haven't stopped to say, hang on a second, is this going to cause confusion, anger, frustration, whatever, is this really what we want to do? So we know this conceptually, it's in our heads, like obviously we don't want people to be frustrated, we don't want them to be stressed, but it gives us a really clear lens to say, is this actually going to take us somewhere we don't want to go? Are there going to be unintended consequences? Because nobody sets out to design a system that does this. And yet, how many of y'all, and I'm not even talking about South Carolina or DDSN or whatever, but like, how many of you have tried to access something and you're like, this is the most confusing and frustrating? If there's not a website, like, I don't want to call somebody, like the world has just changed. I don't want to talk to somebody in person. I'm trying to deal with a flight issue for my honeymoon right now. Confusion, frustration, anger, government control, like it is all of these things. So I think it's just important that we have this in our minds as we identify how are we going to get to this vision. We want to make sure we know what we want to avoid. So I want to reflect on this really quickly. We kind of did this as we were going, but as you're looking at this list and as you heard your colleagues, what are some of the words and phrases that stick out to you? Are there things that we talked a lot about love? So I feel like I can star that one, but are there some things that just jump off the page or that you heard that you feel like we need to emphasize? Words or phrases?
Independence.
Independence. What else?
Safety and security.
Okay, what else?
I think your word belonging, in the 6 or 7 homes that I went to over multiple days, I saw that and it easily can be seen as love. It was just over and over again. You would see this attentive, kind, even when there was correction, it was gentle. It was just beautiful. It was a beautiful thing to see. I think when it works.
When it works, it works.
When it works, it works.
Quality of services.
I like the word positive control, because I think it allows some management of a situation that's complicated, but it allows it to be in a positive way.
We all have rights and responsibilities.
That's right.
So we talk a lot about
And I
rights.
think we deal with a lot of individuals who don't understand the responsibility side of that. And I think that's really hard. It's hard for us to be able to handle that in a positive way a lot of times.
Absolutely.
And to be honest, I think that's something that we really have to work towards is more positive control of those situations. And I think by doing some of those other things, we actually create an atmosphere that allows more for that.
I would agree. Anything else? Any other words or phrases that stick out?
I think choice is super important because people are gonna choose different things on what makes them happy. So having various things available to them, whatever applies to them, might not be the same for everyone.
This gentleman's gonna go golfing. I don't know. But-
He's gonna, Barry's gonna ride his horse, sister's gonna ride his horse on the golf course.
And what if they make you go golfing?
You know, I probably have a behavior plan. Somebody made me go golfing, right?
Golfing can be torturous.
Let me ask you this question, and this is a little bit of a different question, but I think I'm hearing you describe situations you've seen, so I think it'll resonate. What images come to mind as we describe this good life, right? Are there pictures? Are there images? Are there, like, what does it bring up in you as we describe a good life as all of these things?
Accessibility.
Yeah. What other images or pictures or memories?
Of the facilities we've been to, Witten Center.
The Witten Center?
The Witten Center, to me, I mean, for me, of the facilities that we've been to and visited, to me, Witten Center had the best environment.
And that's important.
I mean, it felt
So the
more.
word is environment.
Yeah, environment. The Witten Center environment was just a homey place.
Yeah, I was just thinking that.
Be a home.
They were homey, they were comfortable. The people there seemed happy. You just saw a different environment there than you saw. I mean, and Coastal's fine. Don't get me wrong. Coastal was a good center. It's a good center and it's well managed, but Witten just felt like, I don't know.
There's a different sense.
There was just a different
Yep.
environment. I mean, both of those are great facilities, but Witten just seemed more at ease and comfortable and.
And the people were engaging, like they,
That's it.
you felt.
Not like you were in a hospital.
Right, like you felt warm next to them and they were embracing and
Yeah.
it was easy.
It was easy.
So is cleanliness up there? Cleanliness.
Oh, that's interesting.
What about beyond the regional centers? When you think about other people who access the supports or people who may down the road access it, what is the kind of life you want for them versus what you don't want?
I think you want the same kind of thing. You really want them to feel like they're in a home that's theirs. It's not some kind of institution. I mean, you want them to feel like, if they need a house for a person, I mean, I deal with this from, kind of both perspectives. I see both, but like our daughter's in wheelchairs. Well, you don't see places really for our children to live. I mean, like even in apartments, when our kids went to Clemson, both of us had to go up there and make accommodations for our daughters to be able to live in apartments with friends. They wanted to stick our daughters in apartments by themselves that were handicap accessible for one person. And our daughters don't want to live by themselves. They don't want to be isolated. They want to be in a home environment. And those are things that.
So it's really more than access to healthcare, it's accessibility in
In
life,
general,
being able to live,
there's
all the social connections.
So those are just things that I think, we focus so much on residential housing for, our ID patients and that kind of thing, but we also have these kind of individuals that some of them may need assistance and we just totally don't do anything.
Or out in the world
Yeah,
and in everyday life,
yeah,
the only thing that's different is they're just using their chair for
Yeah.
legs and
Yeah.
transportation. But they're exactly.
and those are just, people don't think about that. I mean, like our daughters, both of our girls' apartments got destroyed during this most recent ice storm. And they weren't a bit concerned. I mean, the people at the apartment complex were not concerned at all.
We
I
were
mean-
thinking about actually not even being able to go back.
Yeah.
Because we wouldn't be able to find
And
accessible housing.
they put her in a hotel and my daughter's living in her mess right now. And they've got walls marked. So we don't know if they're going to tear out the walls in her building. They haven't told her. So we don't know you know, how she's gonna get through that in a wheelchair. You know, so those are things that the environment has to start thinking about stuff like that.
And I love what y'all are referencing because you're not talking about a DDSN facility, right?
No,
And I think that a lot of times what we do is we take all of these concerns and we say, this is a DDSN problem to solve. This is a community housing issue.
Oh, absolutely.
And there's a community housing
A lot of
board
people that need
and
to
task
play a part.
force and all of those things. And so part of
ADA is not.
Exactly.
What?
So this is a little bit of a segue. You didn't even know you were doing this for me, but you did.
Okay.
When we think about how to make this good life happen, right? We know it is not all going to come from DDSN agency services, residential services, community based, whatever. It's not going to come from a waiver, right? That can be part of it, but there are things that people need in order to live this kind of life, a life that feels homey, where they have belonging, they feel loved, they've got access to the same things that anybody else would have access to, whether they have a label or not. There's independence, where there's happiness and just an ease of life, right? So we're gonna talk about, I want you to take your worksheet that you have, flip that over, actually turn it onto the back side. So unfold it and flip it over. So when we think about how any of us get to our good life, right? We know we have different types of needs.
Yeah.
For the group.
Yeah. So we all have different types of needs. I'm gonna share an example. Erica shared about her good life is having access to organic food. And so she has to access information and tools and skills to find out how to get organic food. She has to have connections and relationships, right, to get that food. And then she buys it. There's day-to-day tangible services. A lot of times we put all of our eggs in one basket and we say services are going to get people to a good life. They may help, right? But it's not the only thing. So we want to think about, just for a little bit this morning, what do we need? What do people need in all three buckets if they're going to live this good life, right? When we think about, for example, safety and security, that can't all come from a service system, right? People need to know about their own personal safety, right? What are my rights as an individual? What if I don't want someone to touch me or to take me somewhere? Or if somebody doesn't know how to say no, that's not a service thing, that's an information thing, that's a skills thing, right? So we want to be thinking about, what do we all need in order to live our good life? What skills, what information, what tools, what peer connections, social, emotional, affirmational supports, right? All of us have probably talked to somebody who's been there before. You'll hear me talk about this a lot. I'm sorry, I'm very excited. I'm getting married in 43 days. And I'm talking to all of my wife's friends. How in the world do I do this? I have to live with a boy. First time ever in my life. I have sisters. I don't know about this new world. I can't necessarily, I can read a book to learn how to be a wife, but I'm talking to people. What did you do? What worked? What was the greatest thing about the first year of your marriage? We are also accessing premarital counseling, right? We're getting some services to help us. But the biggest support is from other wives, other people who've been there. So what do we need in that orange bucket? And then what are the day-to-day tangible things we can buy, whether it's from DDSN or any other accessible housing, right? Apartment complexes, all of those different things. So do some brainstorming at your tables. Think about what information and skills people need. What connections and networks, socio-affirmational supports do they need? What tangible goods and services do they need? Don't worry about where they come from, right? Don't worry about how we're going to get them. We'll do that later. But right now, think about what do people need. And I would just also say, you can tackle this any way you want. Some people, they start in the blue bucket and they're like, let's list all the information and skills, and then they jump to the blue bucket. You can also just brainstorm what are all the things people need and jot it down where you think it fits. Don't get too hung up on what bucket it goes in. So take 9-ish minutes, 3 minutes per bucket.
All right, first one is what information or skills can people and families need? Members can navigate knowledge.
So to get all those things, what knowledge and skills?
And if I've seen anything that's a mistake.
Right, it's not just media centers. Those are our two agencies that maybe connect all of the community support agencies together. So when a person has a problem, the hospital can go and say, okay, you have a spinal cord injury. Here's a list of all the steps you take
Took money and.
to get the services you need.
All of those steps are just as important.
Here is your child has a brain injury.
You don't have.
Here are all the services you need to access. That means something, there needs to be some kind of central, and it's not necessarily just DDSN agency, and it's because you want to make sure, right? Or, right, you know, disability service.
Caseworkers come in the date they came.
To remember.
That would create a sensation.
And they say, okay, you know, first. By which they can like.
Almost as big as a judge.
Stuff they need.
See, that's what I think.
Well, so the central office needs to have some sort of system, because in case we're going to say.
Even for our providers,
Yeah.
so that our providers get one more site.
To get paid. Yeah. Sometimes they are.
You know, that's.
Early childhood advisory council. So, their focus is on, it is what it is, but they do have to survive to that.
Yeah.
So it's a narrow page range, but they've created a hub like this where you can say, you know, information about you and your child and like their needs and everything. And it really allows you to access like all the available services for them. It's just, that doesn't exist for across the lifespan. And so it's something like that, but specific to individuals with disabilities. The things I wrote down just while you were talking about diagnosis specific information that's coordinated from all the agencies and organizations that would be involved with that individual across the lifespan. I didn't write all those words out, but I said, I think based on what you're saying. A lot of information. And I think as y'all were talking about too, I wrote down established concrete processes. I think if it's really clear what steps you take, people can follow what they need to get what they need. And if it's not established, another topic, it's not concrete, they needs to be, because I think people have an impression that there's, it's not, that it is squishy, as they said, but it's, if we can make it not squishy for people, I think it'll help.
That's exactly right, because see, I get these calls, and these people, like yesterday, I said to the meeting.
It's a, he cannot take certain balls. And he says, he takes it all the time. He says to me all the time.
Process,
And it's all wrong.
something I
It's
can
just like it's
phone and
made
say,
up.
hey, provide this for services, because I said so.
In which case,
Community action agency, it was established by the United, I mean, by.
Well, we also have spoken about kind of a.
You have a county agency in every county.
Information.
And they provide those services that they like. Those kind of services, they are there. And they're-
Yeah, like you know how restaurants are evaluated based on their volume.
Money is coming in.
We need that similar rating system,
No,
possibly.
it's coming in for these services. And so that can service. Going back to that website, so click on link, go there. Support services is doing, not giving us. Housing, I just built. What we did is we built them all disability accessible. They're all one bedroom unit.
How do you find it?
Wheelchair can roll in there.
How do you pull them in the
All
office?
parents like 9 yards.
Look at this.
Service. Everybody.
Chick-fil-A, I know I'm gonna give
So
you.
like the Clemson, see, not that it's not out there, it's there. Because you know, if they don't want to do this program.
Well, I would say,
If you don't have the right
they would
people
say
sitting at the table.
Well, no, they don't have to fix it.
before it.
Their
And
contract.
you know, should be someone disabilities and special needs sitting in that at Clemson University.
Now,
In-
somebody needs to evaluate whether they're doing a good work under the contracts.
They're not.
Well,
Question is,
how was the
is
contract
anyone that's sitting there?
You don't know.
No, but if they say, hey, this is what you're doing.
Then it's just for kids like cases.
It's just for kids we serve. So we're gonna build some houses, make sure that they.
So maybe it's surrounding this, like, there's so many niche services out there.
And basic.
And that's
That's key.
problem.
That's key.
Because everything is very, very specific to this person with these criteria, right? How do you broaden those services so that they're more accessible to everyone, sort of regardless of why you're accessing the service? And so I think we as agencies and state government are super siloed. I think anybody would agree with,
Emotional
but
affirmation.
that goes along with that mission. You're doing this. And it doesn't, it's not inclusive, is the reality, because you're pushing people out. But that's not really what we're trying to do. I mean, yeah, we're saying, you got people like that too. But then how do those people get what they need too? So it's really across the board.
I mean, it's called a support service.
I'll put that here.
Support services, do we have something like that here at DDSN?
So there's, Lori, what, isn't there like a support, like a family support service that families can receive? Is it not-
Which is basically state money that's available to people.
You got another question. Tangible goods, you're talking about like transportation. Okay.
So if I were to, so it's state funded. I mean, the one that I brought to the commission yesterday, you know, I mean, I think it's trying to go in that direction. More of
Don't worry about where it comes from.
service,
People are
providing families and guardians with
tangible
things
things
that
that
they
they
go to.
I have a very hard time. And it's broken out. One click, and then list. Serve.
2 more minutes here.
We had nothing but your reading down the ratings like. One of his glasses.
It goes back to what you said earlier.
Mental health services, there's just so much there.
It goes back to what you said earlier. Starting with somebody in all words, because if you have support service,
It took a little bit of time. We've got to finish developing that. It takes them 2 years to get diagnosed. Where they should have started. Diagnosed is huge.
Yeah, I'm right. On the job. I put down providers, I mean, really providers.
Yes.
Provide the services.
No, there's more right there. And how bad I like that. Yesterday, I started thinking about it. You're talking about needing providers to do what you're talking about. That, this might be the time to look at your that, or, you know, to add, think about adding that. You know,
So important clarifying question that Janet just asked me, is this about people with disabilities or is this about all people and families? This is about all people and families. Because people with disabilities are people, right? So there may be some additional needs that people with disabilities or special needs have, but let's start with thinking about what do all people need? first? And then what are the additional considerations for those who might have additional support needs?
Yeah, I think everything you mentioned.
So I'll give you 2 more minutes with that framing.
Most of that is,
Let's see.
I wrote. Those things are.
I mean, I think mental health, access to mental health professionals matters to everybody.
that's a big issue.
I think in a room services, like, so sort of being able to access the things that you want.
I mean,
I wrote case manager, of course, that's. I wrote support services over here for data, what goods and resources do people.
They're not eligible, I think they are, and I can't make. My kids always put somebody down that's going to look at their, you know, while they're there. That's another.
I wish you had to.
Yeah.
That's understanding. And that's relating to what politicians.
Right, you're trying to balance all this competing interests.
That's right. To get beyond.
There's a lot more of that.
But she wants him to have life skills so that he can actually live at home at some point and have a job. Like, you know, high paying job. She wants him to have a meaningful job life. And I think that's important that we do some life skills.
Sure, we need community. That's a good.
Send you a program.
We need a belong to.
Look at it. Out to your six.
Really.
Concept.
Now, see, I did some, I did some work with, I was a director of services. Children from the middle school and how.
And that's not, you know, job skills, life skills.
Do things like with everyone. They're straight out of school.
Yeah, like basic living, basic living skills.
And
Because they can't, they don't cook for them, to clean their.
All right, at your tables, I need you to do something for me. I need you to decide who is blue, who is orange, and who is green. And this table and this table, you're gonna have 2 of one color. You can pick whatever, but decide who's blue, who's orange, and who's green. So do that real quick, and then I'll give you your next.
Huh?
We got green.
You take her.
You're orange, you're green, you're blue.
I don't, whatever, if anybody has a preference.
Life skills.
It's probably our table. You'll be green.
No.
I don't need to be blue.
All right, you know what you're doing.
I'll be blue.
Just be blue.
We'll be blue.
Color time.
And then what we.
Girl, what am I supposed to do?
Just pick a color.
Or pick a color.
Pick a color.
Just pick a color.
I'll see or individually. Individually, each person. So 71 skillers. What color are you?
I'm gonna be green.
Okay, you'll be blue.
Make decisions.
You'll be orange in here.
You'll be blue, you'll be blue.
Big blue.
All right, so my green people, everybody who's green, coming over here. I know, I'm making you move. I'm mixing it up.
I'm orange. I changed my color.
If you're green, you're coming over here.
All but green, come on, move.
Green it up.
Now you're changing your color. I heard your color. Are we picking our things?
So if you're orange, you're coming over here. You want them to take their things over here? Bring your things, because we're mixing you up. If you're orange, come over here. I'm there with Lori and Janet. Lori and Janet. You're blue, you're blue. Orange is coming over here. Green is going over there. Blue is going right there. And can you read mine? So go find your friend. Orange is right here.
Blue chairs, extra blue stuff there, reception.
He's ours, so we can say we're on there.
Over here.
I'm moving. Same color.
You're on the right side. Yes, I know.
This is orange. I'm leaving.
Oh, I need my,
Where is green?
break that up. Break it up.
Does anybody else want to come to green? You coming to green?
Over
here.
Green.
Green is here.
Green here.
I move it back. They have to know what we say.
Where's blue?
I've got a little mini.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I'm fine. I'm gonna take a picture of this one. Okay, here's what you're gonna do. So we're gonna sit back here. I'm gonna hold you up.
Yeah.
So we've just jumbled you all up. And you should have a representative from all of the original tables. Now you're gonna come up with your collective bucket.
Green?
Green.
Where's green?
You were right, where you
Green's
were.
right here.
That's blue. Okay.
How you doing?
All right, so at your table, you're just gonna focus on whatever color bucket you are. And you're gonna make your comprehensive list. So think about the things you talked about at your table. And make it all blue, all orange, all
You
green.
got a big old list.
Big old list of orange things, make a big old list. of
That's all
green.
right, that's all right. You got a good writing.
Make your big old list of defining those things.
All right, so, let's go first. Which one you're green? Oh,
Your connection.
just transportation. We have that on our list too.
She wrote down my obvious handwriting analysis. Everybody went faster. I read 2 books when I was young and never got over it.
Yeah, maybe, but not.
Technology's on everything.
That's why I quit doing it. There was too much weird stuff going on. And I said, oh, he is strange.
We're different, two different ones from.
What are we doing? I think we're making a comprehensive.
List. I guess the only other thing I would do, the educational.
Okay, can I just roll out? Okay, in our table, we came up with, contact with caseworkers. Proper contact and consistent contact with caseworker counts correct.
Good number one on our list.
Medical,
Job
dental.
training,
I mean, all those.
job training. Number 3, health certain life skills.
So that's, to me, that's a little bit like an organization that is based on some commonality, right? And so that's why people join them, is because they're interested in that same thing, or they have those similar experiences.
That's why I kind of go.
Right now.
Yeah.
Right now.
The community belongs, like you have your
Yeah,
book
there is one
club,
rule.
and you have your,
Right.
you know,
When
everybody's
things make
in
me
their own little.
not switching church.
Yeah. Community
Yeah.
belonging.
Yes.
No matter what it takes. I will do it. It's not- I'm just saying, what it needs to do to change, right? That's what
That's what I said tonight.
But I'm just saying.
I'm so tired. I haven't done days since surgery. Surgery, I just hadn't done.
All right.
So yesterday was a lot to me.
Couple more minutes, make your list.
Like that.
Is there anything else that
I'm
we
trying
need
to
to
hear.
add?
Support group
I
would
feel like
probably need that.
Right. Housing. We have housing on here?
Right, I mean, it's about building you up.
So listen,
Your next one.
Problem solving.
I think so.
I got that. Okay, you want to?
Yeah, so
Financial, I got
I ended up where I am.
We had,
Yeah.
And your family, what is how your childhood. Okay, you did what?
He said friend.
and I know that
That's really about that information. We were supposed to have that on there. What we said was, if people need to know where.
Especially if you're making buildings.
Like where it got.
Yeah.
We found that. Potential information, where to go.
I have another chance.
I think relationships.
I mean, where to go.
Like,
I was looking back at my notes from her last night. And she was
between, you know, husband, wife, this kind of like,
defined or concrete.
yeah, just like, not like a friendship, but
I looked, I saw it last night.
intimacy.
Click our website.
So then I sit
People are agreeing and say, well, maybe she didn't agree.
I don't promise that by 3 o'clock today, I mean, I.
Because it's not that I'm just coming on.
That's gonna be.
All right, 30 seconds,
Other things.
30 seconds.
Yes, community action
That's
agency.
why I'm like, I
They
get.
paying the light bill, they doing this, they doing that, so that now it
So I
constantly
guess the people that.
scope of it.
Then inside of it, just let it say, okay, when I'm not here.
You can't do anything about it.
Here's
She's
the-
making an offer you the ADA. And if you don't accept that, then it's your problem. That was going.
I have a website.
But the problem is, it's one bit.
All right. This group wants to tell us what's in their bucket first.
I'll do it.
All right, green bucket, what do you got?
Green bucket, we have support services.
Okay.
We have transportation. We have life skills programs. We have furniture, money.
What, money?
Technology,
Okay, goods and resources, is what it says, okay.
education that leads to job security, medical and health services, and housing.
That was a very good list.
We're a good group.
Gold star. Y'all get a chocolate. All right, orange bucket, I'm coming to y'all next.
Does anybody have anything different that would be good on goods and services that we didn't have?
You should have it.
I mean,
Because you had one from every group, I think.
yeah, we had. That's true.
We were at housing.
Sure thing.
Okay, all right.
You just can't read my.
Okay, good. Okay, I just was trying to catch up.
I just have terrible handwriting. Should have made Janet scribe up here.
It's all right.
All right, so orange bucket, what do you got for us?
We have peer connections, counseling, support groups, our affinity groups, family, friendships, and intimacy.
What? Anything else? Anything that has popped into your head that you don't see yet in orange or green?
No, but
One,
I would just like for us to think about, is there anything on that list that shouldn't be there? If the rest of y'all, whatever we put in, anybody else think that this shouldn't be there?
One thing we had was dual diagnosis, programs for dual diagnosis situations. And that, we had that under orange because dual diagnosis is, mental health.
Coordination of services.
one thing that I hear a lot of in the disability community, particularly self-advocates, which I don't think we've talked a lot about today, but they want to be heard. Like a lot of times, people make all these decisions for them in their lives.
Well, choice.
And sometimes they're
Information.
they're not, they don't think that their opinion, that they have an opinion or that, that it matters or, so I don't know, just something we haven't talked a lot about that. It really improves the quality of life for an individual with disabilities when they can be listened to and heard about what they want, which sometimes comes along with choice. Sometimes it comes along with, don't let my parents speak for what I want. I'm a person, I can speak for what I want. I'm tired of my mom speaking for me all the time, or my dad. I mean, that happens a lot, of course, in the disability world, and for good reasons typically, but it definitely can
That's
take
the intentions,
can
but
take a,
yep, I think that's a really good point.
so anyway.
And so I think if I could take the liberty, if part of our vision is that we want people to be heard, there is a skill or a belief or there's a blue bucket support need of self-advocacy. The ability to, and that's not just as a person with disability, but being able to articulate what I want, to stand up for myself, to, all of those different things.
It's on our list.
What is on your list?
Keep in mind, I moved.
That's good.
Communication skills. Financial support and security. Problem solving skills. Proactive thinking. Concrete processes. You had basic life skills there. Information about where to find resources, experiences that are potentially available. Employment, vocational skills, education. Proactive thinking.
You got that?
Oh, sorry.
You got that.
I think I'm done with everything.
And our table has, in addition to that, true contact with caseworkers.
Oh, yeah. Contact with caseworkers. Sorry, I thought I had them all.
Despite what Alliant may have contracted with us to do. There's something missing.
So I think that, and part of that, what I hear sort of across the board is linkages and connections. People need linkages and connections. Okay, anything that hasn't been said that you want to make sure, don't even worry about what color it needs to be, but what needs to be up here that maybe isn't already.
Someone's got financial, didn't they put financial down on?
Yep, we've got financial in a couple different.
Okay.
Yep.
I mean, I just wanted to qualify one of the blue things to say that people need to understand how our system works in order to, be able to navigate it and because we may not like the way it works, but how it works is how it works.
Navigation skills and support. Navigation. That was harder than it should have been.
One of the things I'm thinking about is things being individualized, so I don't know where that fits.
Hold that thought, because I think it fits in the next.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it fits, but hold on to it. Okay. I'm gonna ask you the same questions. You're gonna be so tired of these questions by the time we're done, but I promise it gets us somewhere. What words or phrases stick out to you? As you look at this, what do you go, yep, I resonate with that. Financial.
I think proactive thinking. I like life skills too, just being able to, know how to do things.
I like advocacy. Really the self-advocacy.
We need both. Gotta have both.
Advocates and allies, yeah. Okay. Here's another question. As you look at this list, especially thinking about part of what we want to design and to continue to build on what you already have as far as the service system is these things, right? Filling these buckets, meeting these needs so that people can achieve their vision. Is there anything that's exciting?
Concrete processes.
Yeah, okay. Anything else that's exciting, that intrigues you, that you can kind of get jazzed about?
Those diagnosis programs are important to me. I just see a lot of that.
I think understanding how our system works is a big deal. I know that sounds, I mean, that sounds like basic, but it's really, there's a lot of need for that around here.
I agree with you. I've seen that just we don't understand what to do. And nobody's there to tell them, which ties into the issue of caseworkers. What is a caseworker for? Because what I have heard, at least in a couple of instances, we don't see the caseworker where you're supposed to see the caseworker. Yeah, but the thing that I've got from the caseworker is absolutely contradictory to what I'm seeing in person with with the individual. So there's some kind of disconnect.
Well, and there's a problem too. I know this sounds crazy, but Rob and I talked a little bit about this yesterday, is we use the word provider. And people that aren't in the DDSN know, when you say the word provider to them, they think of their doctor or their nurse. They don't think of their caseworker as being a provider. They don't think of their provider holds so many different things underneath it. They're completely confused by that. It's like terminology. And instead of calling them a caseworker, calling them a CTH2 or whatever, we call them providers. And they look at us like, do what? I mean, and I think we're gonna have to figure out a way to, I mean, we didn't understand, like, we had a discussion yesterday about the differences in a CTH1 and a CTH2. And we didn't understand the extreme differences as commissioners. I mean, we were struggling to figure that out. And so I can imagine what a person who's not in here monthly would struggle with that. You know, those are just struggles that, I mean, as a person who's involved in disabilities, I struggle with.
Sure.
So I can imagine somebody that's brand new, who's got a child with a situation, would be like, do what? You know.
That's a big part. What she's saying is a big part of what I'm saying about people understanding how the system works, not only how it works, but what we mean by these acronyms that we love to use around here, AKCs, DDD. I mean, we should be defining those things, and then there should be an easy way to define what CHT2
Or we need to
is.
think of a name for it, a simple name for caseworker. I mean, it's easier to say than provider.
And this broad issue that she talked, what we think a caseworker should be doing is a caseworker thinking that's what he or she should be doing?
So what I hear y'all saying is that there needs to be some clarification of roles and responsibilities and some accountability.
And Alliant is supposed to be there. We got a contract with it, but that apparently doesn't. I mean, when I'm told to get the guy on the phone that the person he's there to see, it says that he cannot be outside because he's physically unable to. And he says, I'm watching him cut the grass right now. And when's the last time you saw the case? It was about 6 months ago.
So I will tell you, one of the things we're doing nationwide is starting to work on and kind of codify, for lack of a better term, a national set of core competencies for caseworkers. There is not a national standard for caseworkers who support people with IDD and special healthcare needs. You've got them for nurses, you've got them for life coaches, you've got them for there's not a national set. So what y'all are describing is not unique, unfortunately, to South Carolina. It's an issue we're seeing across the country. There's a lot of misunderstandings about what that looks like.
So my question would be to you, when you're out in the world now talking with the actual individuals that are supposed to be receiving services, one of the questions should be, when have you last seen your caseworker? What did they help you with? Do you think having this caseworker is beneficial to you in some form or fashion, and what is it? And it could be there's a disconnect with what the caseworker is. Why do I need to go out there? I mean, they're set up, they got a place, they're being taken care of. What do they need me hovering around for?
Yeah. I think I totally agree with you. And I think where we want to kind of go then, if we're going to get to that level of understanding, clarity, accountability, we have to know, what does a good system look like, so that then we figure out who's supposed to do what, right? So we are actually going to spend the next 15 or so minutes before we let you out of here on time, I promise, digging into that. So I'm going to ask you for a second to take off your DDSN hat, right? And to think about if you could design a service system that helps people achieve the outcomes, that gets to the good life that people want, that meets these needs and fills these buckets. If you could design a good system, what would that look like? What would be needed to fill the buckets of people and families? So try to get out of well, this is what we do at DDSN, right, wrong, or otherwise, and think about if time and money were no object. and you held the magic wand. And yes, that's a very social worker question, but just, you gotta bear with me. I bring all of me everywhere I go.
Yeah, that's very
Right,
social.
so
but anyway.
think about if you could design a good system, what would that look like? Flip your, if you tore your sheet apart, that's totally fine. If you didn't, flip that back over. And in that other purple box with your new group of friends, start jotting down some ideas of what would a good system look like? And at the same time, what are the things that a good system would not have? What do you want to avoid? If you were designing a system, what would you not want it to include? So I'll give you all this information.
So it looks like it's just me and you, so everybody failed. all this.
Everybody's left you. Who was over here with us? You were. They all left us.
This is gonna be.
That's right.
Okay. Lydia.
Yeah, you sit right here. What's the good system look like? What do you want to
Then I
avoid?
can draw a circle with me in the middle of it and says, okay, what are the services? Because I may come on to look for.
And the services is that none of
But
them
at the same
connected.
time.
Nothing
I find
is
that
connected.
And that's a big one.
They got a process over there
Yeah,
for
the
folks
problem
with
is,
disabilities and special
nobody knows
needs.
what anybody else
I
is
click
doing.
on those links, so I just make it applicable, because a lot of people are not
When it comes down to providing services.
internet savvy.
Nobody knows.
So you have to make it.
Beyond what they do siloed. Siloed. The silo is truly.
Like if I'm going to teach a older person.
I'm not saying how we do it.
I'll still them. How do you,
Yeah, that's a good clarification. Don't worry about how to do it. What are the characteristics of a good system?
shoebox?
I want it to be
Take
data
it,
driven.
and then bring the computer.
Personal.
Because the shoebox, they just take
And
it,
sort of
put it
doing
in
that
there.
continuous quality
It's a
improvement, right?
step.
Continually assessing
Whether it's.
where
Step,
gaps
but
are,
they-
fill the gaps. Because that's not how we work.
Conversation.
Most state agents.
What?
They don't have the police doing it, they don't have the school system doing it, they don't have. They have that consistent one group doing.
Make that real in my
And then they say, okay, these are the things. How are we gonna find them? I don't need medication wise, they bring in the doctor says, okay, we need to do this. If it's a system. All right, so then they can start planning on how to provide the services and those medications.
And when I get
Then
in,
they go to the
that's
physical
fine,
therapist.
that's fine, certainly.
Now they're physical.
I'm looking
therapy.
for-
I think it's system like, it's about disability, okay, let's.
It's a housing system.
There you go. Now you're talking.
Assess that in 6 months. I want to know, I want to be, whatever, figure out when they get any movement, they change that process. You know, based on what they're doing.
I want there to be choice to raise because you're so limited with the caregivers that are.
We all enjoy it.
The choice.
Now, somebody may really want to move anything over here now. When I'm moving her down, she's got, you know, she.
Yeah,
Got
how much-
movement in her-
You've got 3 minutes. If you haven't talked about what you've done,
Meaning more providers, just to, right, so I mean, I think that.
Then we're not making. Based on, you know, if they don't have.
most
I would
people.
have to-
Everybody, to be able to really pick from that service here.
Whatever stage they're at. And I think that's something we're missing,
Basically,
is that
what you're saying
we
is,
put these kids in our system with an easy set of parameters, and we just leave them there.
Put Ed
Instead of
Miller in there.
pushing them to
And then when I
progress,
pull up Ed
we
Miller,
just
it's gonna
provide
tell
the
Ed
same
Miller, you
services
got
that they were
$2.
getting day one.
Here's the things you can spend it on. Here's the things you can spend it on.
Because now you have filtered me out from everybody that's in your system. I'm
It's not
good with
easy
Ed
to do
Miller.
that, but it's the way to.
Here are the ways you can spend it.
Now, people give assigned different money.
Procedures.
How much need, it's right, it's like,
But you filtered me out,
Right.
because all you trying to do is get.
Make sure
From
that
them,
they're
can't make it down.
so you don't have any gap, you don't have any room.
And they would meet on each patient, you know, every.
You make your decision, not a case.
Because when I run out.
They-
You don't have anything.
Case management, I tacked it at the first step, and then, but I think that there needs to be something that
You need to know where you meet.
I mean, I think that
And
I'm sure that's what.
like me right here.
Great.
but it's not like somewhere down there necessarily, so forget the, there's no service there. Let's just say
Every person said it. Yes, there needs to be periodic assessments.
That's not good as much. They're
Whether it's monthly, whether it's quarterly.
And part of that, honestly, I think is that fair. And I think a lot of that information. The therapist thing is. Right, but that's what we don't have. That's not. Then here's these services. You can send all there to develop that. It doesn't call it case file, but get your how we go on.
Yeah.
At the end, guess what I'm saying?
That's,
You don't have anything.
that's.
No, I really have a relationship of.
Well, and I'm nice for the agency.
As a clarification.
Well, this is the amount of things
Things that you figure out, you know.
And it's about that is we got to.
If it's truly something that this person needs to
Is that just?
proceed
Don't
to a
dedicate-
meaningful
I
life
love that.
and truly
All right.
be able to move forward. We need.
Who would like to tell us what a good system would look like?
But
Who wants to share? Next message.
I think I'm crazy anyway.
Janet, you're volunteer.
Voluntold.
Yeah.
Voluntold.
I was trying to not say it, but.
So what we were discussing was a system that, especially like a DDSN system, that has clear information about the goal of the system, easy access, and then once you are kind of in the system, it gives you parameters, which could be money or dollars, and information. And then you decide how to spend your dollars.
Flexibility, I like that.
Yeah, that's what we were kind of talking about.
Okay, that's a good word.
that's why I'm over here with Janet.
What would you add at the back corner over there?
We just talked about having definite processes and having, a clear assessment of each individual from the very beginning, but then having regular, I use the ITAC team, for example, have something kind of like the ITAC team that actually assesses the individuals on a regular basis. And we talked about using something kind of like TheraUp to where you can actually see what the progress of that person is to assess what they need to move forward to a more, what do we call it? What kind of life? More productive, more, functional life, and to help them live their best life, based on a variety of assessments that are made by professionals that actually understand their particular disability.
I love what you're saying because I think a lot of times we see assessment or planning as a point in time. So I'm going to do this plan and that's the plan forever and ever and ever,
Yeah.
but life changes, stuff happens, we grow.
And what we were talking about is, you know, when we were at Shepherd, they did that with us when we went in with my daughter. They brought in the pharmacist, they brought in the doctor, the physical therapist, the architect, they brought in everybody. And they brought my daughter in, me in, and we all had input as to where we were going and where she was at. I mean, they were upfront with her about where she was and where they were going. And then they made individual teams made plans. They put those plans together in a folder or whatever, and we proceeded. And then every month we would meet again and they would all come back together and say, okay, this is where we are. This is where they were meeting weekly, but they didn't bring us in but once a month. And then once a month it would say, okay, this is where we are now. I mean, they even had a school teacher that came in and assessed her academically as well, you know, and everybody came back together and they said, okay, we've got this change, this change, this change. Let's adjust the plan. Are y'all okay with that? And we saw tremendous success in that she lived a successful life because she learned to live with the station she was at each time, but we were making progress. And I think a lot of times we put people in this category and we say, okay, they've got this issue, And we just assume that they're not gonna change. And I don't think we can do that. I think we've got to constantly be looking at, okay, well, things in the world change, services change, abilities change, technology changes. Can we use assistive technology with this person now? Could this person live alone now rather than, with some assistive technology, rather than living, in a.
It's a system of positive growth.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we're looking for, is a positive growth type system. If that makes
No,
sense.
lots of, and I hope I'm not putting words in your mouth, but as you were talking, you were talking about interdisciplinary teams. You were talking
That's
about
right.
integrated support. So not
Yes.
just, one type of service. You
That's
were
right.
talking about a focus on the individual and their whole life,
That's
not
right.
just their disability or not just whatever that is.
Just
So,
whatever their their
Right,
medical
right.
issue doesn't always determine long-term. So those are just things that.
and I feel like I heard y'all talking about, you didn't use these words necessarily, but connection and collaboration. There's disconnects between if you receive mental health services and you receive DDSN services, and this is any state, I'm not picking on South Carolina, you've got two sets of teams, two sets of case managers, two sets of services, two sets, and who's responsible for navigating all of that? Well, the person or the family member.
And everybody's responsible.
Yeah.
I mean, the DDSN takes responsibility, but, really, who's responsible? I mean, that's what it comes down to.
So y'all mentioned individualized. What else did you say at this front table up here? A good system would look
Timely,
like?
timely services.
Let me just jot this down real quick before I forget.
And then definitely like specific, individualized,
Continuous quality improvement of the services.
continuous. Yep.
So just revisit them. What you put in place today might not be the same thing in 6 months from now. They should always be revamped and looked at to see for improvements.
Data-driven. Continuous quality improvement, basically, which I think is right above that.
Yeah, driven by
Okay,
data, both anecdotal and qualitative and quantitative, I would
And then
assume.
easy to navigate.
Yeah, that goes back to what I was talking about.
Oh, yeah.
Understanding the system, navigating the system.
And then choices.
What do we not want? Real quick, hit me with some high level things we want to avoid. This is our gut check.
Confusion.
Gaps, overlaps.
Yeah, duplications.
Full What you don't inspect, don't expect. And I think a lot of that goes on out in the world and we don't know about it.
And I think limitations is something else we need to stop. We need to stop people from saying, okay, because they have this, they can't do. That's got to stop.
So low expectations.
Yes.
Cookie cutter application.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's
Miscommunication.
Yes. Yes.
Undefined processes and procedures.
So.
Okay, it's very, you might have some
Undefined
policy you need to
processes and
write.
Procedures.
Undefined, I like that, undefined process.
Take a picture of that, Mary, take a picture.
So it's interesting because as we look at defining processes and procedures, we'll want to keep in mind that we want flexibility. So we have to design processes and procedures and policies that allow for nuance, right? And that's always one of the, I'm looking at you, Lori, because policy, yeah. You know.
Don't want those unintended.
I just worked with an organization that had 147, I'm not kidding you.
We might have,
Policies.
147.
Policies.
honey, how many have we done? We've gone over here.
That's chicken.
I'm pretty sure we have. at least
You guys are winners.
Uh-oh.
You're on thin ice.
147.
I'm just kidding.
But I get to get on a plane in 4 hours, so you can get mad at me.
I know we have one number 200 and something, because we changed it yesterday.
Okay.
I want you to have before I leave.
So, I think it would be interesting, just real quick, Erica has had the opportunity to talk to some folks and we'll talk to some more, but Erica, do you want to share some of what you've heard?
So I talked to a lot of DDSN staff, so not just the executive staff that's in this room, but several of the people that operate, manage a lot of the programs, not just residential, but also people living on their own in the community, or people who are under age 2, or a person transitioning, foster care, like the whole mix, the whole gamut of what you might touch. And these are the themes I heard from people, is that they think a good system is one that supports people to live the lives they want. That means living, working, playing, contributing to your community. So that's kind of getting at what we want in a good life. They think it should be driven by people with disabilities who are empowered to advocate for themselves. You guys have said that. Inclusive, meaning real relationships, not just relationships with people who are paid to be in the home with me, but real relationships. Integrated. So again, not just integrated because I put this home next to this home, but integrated meaning I'm involved in my community. I'm part of something. I'm part of a group or church or whatever it might be. Collaborative, that's a big one that came up a lot. The need to really coordinate across programs and services so that people can truly get their needs met and live their best lives. They mentioned a lot of what it isn't. On the isn't side is the lack of services, the unmet need because of the inability to coordinate supports. What they want is, or what they think is a good system is one that's available to all, flexible. You all said that. Built on a person-centered culture. A lot of conversation about how a lot of services and supports across providers, whether it's caseworkers or direct service workers or management at the provider levels, very paternalistic, like going back to like the early years of when a lot of these institutional settings kind of popped up, moving people more toward a person-centered culture. So people are truly, it's really about what you want. It's not just about what's good for you, but also what's important to you. And then to be fostered by a system that's fostered by people with knowledge, skills, and abilities to help people live their best lives. So really building on that training component, having dignity of risk, balancing health and safety with making choices for myself, and a focus on outcomes because we focus a lot on process. So a lot of focus on outcomes, what's really important to people. So then you can see the opposite is really a lot of the opposite of what's good in the system. I feel like after going through this exercise with all of you, a lot of the DDSN staff have a lot of the same themes. And I think that's part of the takeaway from this morning is that y'all have more in common than you do not in common, right? It's really a focus on people. And if you stay like focused on some of the things that you see in a good system, then we can build a strategic plan that truly does help you to get there. It's going to take some baby steps in some ways, but that's the goal of what we're trying to do. So I guess our final question for you, and since we're at time, you don't all have to answer if you don't want to, is what are your aha moments? Were there any from the morning where you're like, this is what I got out of this? So kind of going back to his earlier question, any aha moments or things that kind of go oomph to your heart?
I wouldn't say aha moments, but it was really nice to have the executive staff and the commission together, like working collaboratively together to know that we're on the same page. And I know that I'm a newer member and I just thought that was great.
So more conversation like this.
Yeah, it was really nice.
Yeah, I think I agree with Michelle. I feel like, I get conversation as the chairman, I get conversation pretty much weekly with the chairman or with the executive director. And I know these guys. I mean, I've been around you guys and talked to you enough, but I don't really get to know what you want and what you feel and how where you see this organization going. And it helps me to know that our goals are very similar. I mean, they're very similar and that we want the same things. We just got to figure out how to get them going in the same direction. And it helps me to know what the other people outside of this room also,
They have the same common
they have the very same visions and goals as us. We just got to figure out how we get there. And that's a frustration for me because, I'm the person who sits around and thinks of ways to solve these problems. So I'm sure on the way home, I'll come up with 10,000 ways and call one of the commissioners and say, have you thought about this? So anyway,
And as we go out and talk to people, providers, casework, case managers, people who receive supports, we're probably going to hear these same themes. And I think that's the point, is to have a common vision that everybody can understand and buy and kind of move toward. So that there's not like families thinking that you all mean this when really they need this. It's really bringing it together into one cohesive, focus point.
Do you want us to leave these here to collect? What do you want us to do?
No, I mean, you can take them if you want them, yeah. I mean, if you want to leave notes, we're happy to have that. We'll take what's up on the walls and stuff. Were there any other final comments or DDSN staff, did you have anything?
Commissioners, we do have to close the meeting, so you guys don't leave.
I need to go.
Other do your formal
I think
thing.
I have enough of you here to close.
Okay, go ahead.
You have to have a quorum.
All right, are you done? All right, Commissioners, I thank you for being here today. I think we accomplished a lot, and I appreciate you. Do I have a motion to adjourn for today?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. All right, motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye. All opposed? Here we are. We're closed, and we will see you all next month. Thanks, guys.